All right, what is going on, Ravens flock? And we are back here again with a Ravens Way podcast, episode number 15. And we are joined here tonight by Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing? How are we feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited to be talking with you again. I know a lot has changed since we last talked, but it's exciting now. There's a lot of excitement around this team, but I will say, it is a pretty loaded AFC and a pretty even loaded AFC North this year. So they have their work cut out for them, but I think they've built their roster in a way, especially offensively, that's very promising. And defensively, there are a couple holes I'm a little concerned about, but we'll get to all that, I'm sure.
Definitely. I feel like the last time we were together, was that in season?
The last time you and I talked, I know we were on Ken's live stream together during the draft
Oh,
on day two,
yeah.
but like you and I talking solo, it was, I think it was in season. It was either the Patriots or the Bills, one of those two. We previewed
I think it was
one
Buffalo.
of those games.
I
think I predicted the Ravens to lose, and then everybody hated me, and then they lost, and I was like, I didn't want them to lose, but it's what I predicted.
I think it was Buffalo, yeah, because that game had a lot of hype to it. I had to make sure to get you on. But yeah, as you noted, feeling good about the offense. The defense has a little bit of holes, but starting off, we want to start off with training camp before we get to maybe more roster talk. Kevin, give me the 3 stock up guys that you have so far in training camp through, 10 days worth of camp?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is Zay Flowers. His arrow's pointing to the moon. Like he has done everything that he can to kind of prove that he's the real deal without taking a snap yet. And I know that that's a big part of it. But someone who, I loved the pick when it happened. There were a couple of other guys I'd have been fine with them taking. But Flowers is somebody that I think is a 3-level guy. He can do short, do intermediate, do deep stuff as well. But the way he runs his routes, I love. The Ravens have so many good route runners at the receiver position, and Flowers is the one where receivers have to break down and they'll run out, they'll go in. He breaks down, but he doesn't stop. Like he just glides through his cuts, glides through his breaks, and it seems like literally no one can defend him at training camp right now. So I'm excited to see for him. I'd also give a stock up to Odell. I mean, I know he's had a couple of vet day stuff and he's kind of ramping up coming back from the injury, but he's establishing a connection with Lamar and kind of just getting up to speed with everything. And so I know while he's not going 100% full speed, I think the way he's fit in both on and honestly off the field, it seems like he's embraced the city, embraced the team, embraced the organization. I think that's a big part of what the Ravens value. And then I'd probably say Justin Madubuike is someone that I feel like's gotten a lot of hype so far. And I think that's big, obviously losing Calais Campbell. He's not a guy who's had like 10 sacks a season, obviously, but I think he's improved every single season. Feels like he can over rush at times where he rushes and gets there and just doesn't have a plan. He's like, okay, what do I do now? But I think with increased, improved opportunity, he's going to have a really big year. And the Ravens offensive line room is one that I'm just like, I feel fine about it this year, like it's really good. But next year, I don't know what the heck's going to happen because Madubuike and Patrick Washington are free agents. Michael Pierce said he might retire at the end of the contract that he has, and then Brent Urban's are free. So really only Travis Jones is the guy who you feel comfortable in being there because he's the only guy who is going to be there right now. But Madubuike, and I'll say Travis Jones is like an honorary stock up guy. Feels like he's been bullying guys off the line. And that's been, if we're talking stock down, I think Sam Mustipher has been on the opposing end of a lot of those defensive line reps. So I don't know what his status holds, but I'm excited about the defensive line this year.
Definitely. Interesting you had 2 wide receivers. That would be huge if the guys that we added on really come in here and make a difference. For my 3, I would go Nelson Aguilar as one of them. Obviously at the beginning of the offseason was the first player we signed. Made a little bit of a joke and the whole Philadelphia Fire thing where he was dropping, the whole dropping babies like Aguilar. But outside of that, I think that he really can provide a level to this offense that can stretch the field and be a big playmaker. And I boldly predicted a few times that I think he could be the second most receiving yard player through the first month of September. I think that's not too far gone with some of the injuries that we have there and the question marks. I really do think that he's going to be a reliable target for Lamar, even though his hands maybe not the most reliable historically, but seems like so far it's going okay. Then the other player I would go with is Michael Pierce. You mentioned him obviously maybe retiring there at the end of his contract, but there's been a lot of reports about the interior offensive line kind of get bullied around by a lot of those guys. And I feel like Michael Pierce is someone that's kind of draws the attention and draws the double team and allows some of the other guys in the defensive line to eat up. And he's a little bit of an unsung hero. And we missed him last year, and he showed in that first game that he's still Michael Pierce, he's still a good football player. So I'm really excited about him. And the third player I would go with is, and it kind of hurts me to say this because I wasn't the biggest fan of him, Rocky Sin. I got to see him, obviously the injury, but aside from that, on the practice field, he's made a lot of pass breakups, interceptions. You always see his name there. And once we first signed him, like, man, I really wanted Marcus Peters back, and I was a little jealous. But I got to see him this past Saturday stadium practice. I was like, wow, he really is making a lot of pass breakups. So I have to give credit where credit is due. And I guess to throw in my little half stock up would be Jalen Armour-Davis, another player that I was not really fond of coming out of the draft, but apparently a lot of the reports are saying that he's out there and he's competing, and he's, I think Coach, if I'm not mistaken, Hewitt said that he was almost in the race for cornerback 2, which is surprising, and that was before the Rocky Sin injury. So you got to feel a little bit good about those reports. I will probably get to it later about the corner room being thin and a lot of these young guys need to step up. But flipping to the stock down, I know you said Sam Mustipher was one of your stock downs. Who are your other two kind of stock downs so far through training camp?
Yeah, it feels like Mustipher is probably at the top of that list. I think Ben Cleveland also is one that just we haven't heard a lot about him. I don't, he just feels like he hasn't taken advantage of the opportunity. I mean, there is a clear competition. Like anybody can go out there, whether it's Saleh, whether it's Cleveland, John Simpson, you want to throw Daniel Filele's name in there, whatever you want to do. They don't know who's playing left guard for them. And it just doesn't feel like Cleveland's really grasped that. I know when talking about the athleticism, maybe there's been stuff about his work ethic that's come out. I don't feel like he's and it's unfortunate because I was super excited when they drafted him. I know a lot of people are, making the Ben Cleveland memes of him taking over the harbor and all that stuff. But it just feels like for all that hype, he wasn't able to take it. The whole conditioning test thing last year, where it took him 2 weeks to pass the conditioning test, and I was just thinking, man, I know the Ravens conditioning test is not easy, but for these players, it can be just a matter of work ethic, and I just don't think it was there for him. So maybe he can turn it around. Maybe he has a strong preseason. Admittedly, I did not have Ben Powers on my 53-man roster last year until very late, and he ends up winning the starting job and earning a huge contract in Denver. So maybe it's the same thing with Ben Cleveland, but that's another guy. And then my last stock down guy, if I had to, it's an interesting, I don't know, maybe Anthony Brown. It feels like Josh Johnson's kind of passed him. I'm very high on Anthony Brown, but it feels like Josh Johnson's kind of passed him for the third quarterback job. And I don't know whether Baltimore feels like it's easier to sneak Anthony Brown on the practice squad as opposed to Josh Johnson. I don't know whether he just hasn't been making plays in training camp so far, but I just haven't been hearing a lot about him. And I guess a half stock down for me, I don't know what's going on with Devin Duvernay right now. I realize I missed an opportunity to say Nelson Aguilar. You made a good one because he's been making plays every single day, it feels like. But to me, it was that 4th, 5th competition between Aguilar and Duvernay, and it feels like we've heard everything about Aguilar and then really nothing about Duvernay. So I don't know whether he's just not making plays or just Aguilar's been so good he's kind of pushed Duvernay down to the 5th role. But I'm really intrigued to see kind of where he is moving forward and kind of going into the preseason this year.
Yeah, you do make an interesting point there with Duvernay. I feel like you really haven't heard a lot of him, and he's coming off that broken foot, and he's also, I think, $4 million charge against the cap this year, and they can get out of that if they really wanted to. If they really needed that $4 million, they could be like, well, we think that Tylan Wallace and James Roche can make the roster, and that'll be our back end too. And then we'll go Aguilar, Bateman, Beckham, Flowers, our first 4. I mean, that's, you got it. I mean, with how much money they spent in the offseason, along with void years, you have to find money somewhere sometimes to maybe not go ahead and would you rather restructure one of these contracts from Mark Andrews, Marlon Humphrey, or any of them, or would you just rather cut Devin Duvernay and say we trust the depth we have behind him? That could come down to it. I could see that scenario playing out, but I guess my 3 stock down guys would be, I think number 1, you kind of hit it, was Ben Cleveland. Um, you know, I just feel like with what we expected of him coming in, and he's had a lot of opportunity over the past 2 seasons to go out there and make a name for himself on the field. Um, there's been plenty of times where guards have went down, and Tyree Phillips is out there playing tackle, and you feel like Ben Cleveland should try and find his way onto the field at some point. But it's clearly the coaching staff has him practicing at right tackle, and it just feels like a missed opportunity for him to go and step up. But as you alluded to, Ben Powers at this same time last year, it just kind of feels like it could be the same. Maybe just because their both name is like first name is Ben, and I'm like yeah, okay, maybe I'll make the same conclusion. But I guess the second stock down guy for me would probably be, I want to say Moses. I feel like Moses has always been an average right tackle, which is not a bad. It's never a bad thing. Compared to what we had in 2021, signing him was a good idea. To bring in a solid, stable right tackle that's gonna be good. But from what I've seen, and I've made this prediction before, if the Ravens feel like they can fade out a veteran with a younger guy, they'll do it. And I kind of feel like this could be Daniel Falele week 8 coming in and kind of taking over that role a little bit. Just if Moses starts struggling, because from what I've seen and heard, I mean, these maybe it's just because Ojabo and Owe are really good, but it seems like he's getting eaten alive a little bit out there. But outside of him, I guess my third stock down, and this will probably segue into our next part, is J.K. Dobbins. Not that he's bad or he isn't a good football player, and he hasn't been out there, but him not being out there, and with some of the more information that has come out, we all have to remember who our head coach is, which is John Harbaugh, and he does not let things like that go past him without noticing. So with him not being out there, you kind of feel like this team may just be like week 1, like we had these guys showed up in training camp, they practiced all the way through, we're gonna let them get their reps, and it'll kind of be like almost like when he came in the league in 2020 again. He's got to go out there and earn it. And the segue kind of into our J.K. Dobbins kind of topic, because I feel like it's a pretty important topic to talk about, and there's not a lot of drama going on. Thankfully, we put it all behind us this offseason for the most part. I think I'd cry blood if I was out here talking about Lamar contract again in August. But the J.K. Dobbins discussion. Kevin, what are your initial thoughts on it? Do you have any strong opinions? Do you you're just like it is what it is, just be out there week 1, or what are you thinking?
Well, it's really interesting because going into, I guess, training, or I guess going into the early workouts, OTAs, minicamp, I kind of expected that we'd see this be more of a J.K. Dobbins-led backfield, where not that you don't play Gus Edwards or don't play Justice Hill or whatnot, but we've seen a pretty, honestly, very even split between Dobbins and Edwards whenever they've been on the field together and both healthy. But I feel like with the way things are, I believe J.K. deserves more carries than what he's had, but obviously with the new offense is kind of, well, where do you find those carries if they're throwing the ball, X amount of times more? Do Lamar's carries go down? I think that's been kind of the common theme that people are looking at. But I kind of expected it to be 1A versus 1B with Dobbins and Edwards, as opposed to a pretty even split that we've seen. But if this is a situation where, I mean, we can put 2 and 2 together. It hasn't been, I guess, confirmed, but I think Melvin Gordon spilled the beans. Ian Rappaport today said that it's out there where, this is contract related. If he doesn't suit up until like a week before the season, or like week 1 on the dot, how confident are the Ravens putting him out there in a new offense and still having to ramp up physically? I think we see a heavy dose of Gus Edwards, and I don't even know if the Ravens put him out there. If he says, yeah, I'm ready to come back, maybe the Ravens say, well, we need to give you some time to figure stuff out. Now, I don't know if that's the actual route they take, but it just clouds everything up because I think on paper, when we see Dobbins and we see Edwards as the Ravens' 2 top running backs, a lot of people feel confident about that. I'm not saying it's a complete blow to their season if they don't have Dobbins. I think the way, and it honestly goes into a deeper conversation of the running back value, but I think that Edwards and Justice Hill and Melvin Gordon and if Keaton Mitchell's out there, those guys can do fine. Now it's a benefit. Like you'd rather have Dobbins. You'd rather have him out there. He's that good of a player. We know what he is when he's healthy. But my whole take on the situation, even dating back to when the tweets first came out, was that I don't feel like Dobbins has a ton of leverage right now in the fact, and also just the fact that I don't think his value is as high as it can be. Like if he were to sign an extension with the Ravens right now, like today or tomorrow or in the next couple of days, it's probably based on the assumption like, oh, is his health fully there? You know, is he able to play a full 17-game season? If he goes out there and plays a full 17-game season this year, if he has 1,000 yards, if he has 10 touchdowns, whatever it is, and just breaks out in the way that I think a lot of people were expecting him to in 2021 before the injury, like I thought that Jonathan Taylor breakout year was going to be J.K. Dobbins, and then the injury happened. But if he does that, the contract that he gets next offseason is probably a lot bigger than it would be right now. And I understand long-term security and wanting it, you know, as soon as you can get it. And especially with the way Dobbins and his health has been since 2021 with having the cleanup surgery after the gruesome knee injury. I get, you know, him wanting a deal now, but I think that he can add and maximize his value if he just goes out there and plays. And again, there's a point to it being a business, both for the players and obviously for the owners. You know, it goes both ways there. But I just don't think there's a lot in it for J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, right now. And that is just the way the running back position is. I think running backs should get paid. You know, I think the way they're being treated isn't fair. But at this point, it's not just a J.K. Dobbins thing. It's a Saquon thing. It's a Josh Jacobs thing. It's a Austin Eckler. It's an everybody thing. Jonathan Taylor, obviously. So until something changes, I just don't know that J.K. Dobbins is going to get the deal he's looking for. And on top of that, quickly, the Ravens don't historically pay running backs. Back in March, back in April, I had predicted that the Ravens weren't going to re-sign him after the season because historically they just don't really do that. Like they extended Edwards, but that was like 3 years, $9 million or something like that, where it wasn't a huge deal. I don't know if the Ravens are all of a sudden going to pony up money for J.K. Dobbins. I hope they do. I would rather have him re-signed than not. I'd rather have him on the team, but maybe they want to spend that money elsewhere. So we'll see. It's just, at least it's not what's going on. And at least we don't have Steve Bisciotti tweeting agents and doing all that crazy stuff right now. Yeah. At least we can say that.
Yeah. You know, I go back and forth a lot. I mean, a suggestion I would have to resolve it a little bit is kind of do what they did with Saquon's contract and offer him an extra $1 million in incentives for the season. I feel like that's a fair middle ground. But a lot of reports are that J.K. Dobbins now wants at least $10 million a year, and I can't justify that, and for that to be the hill that has to be crossed in order for him to play, you know, you pay Gus Edwards, you draft Justice Hill, you sign Melvin Gordon to a incentivized contract. You know, you have all this kind of leverage against him, basically, with these 3 backs that I think are all pretty capable. Melvin Gordon being the least capable, but and you have Keaton Mitchell, as we mentioned as well. You know, like I get getting your money now, but you know, you just there's going to come a point where it's going to become like 20 days before the season starts. And if he isn't out there, like the chances of him, like, so if he, look at, once again, we have to remember who our head coach is. If he isn't out there, I would say like 3 weeks before the season starts practicing, like he's fully, I'm going to guess he's healthy. I'm going to guess right now he's healthy. He's just kind of like taking this out as long as he can. If he isn't out there 20 days before the season starts, I don't see a world where John Harbaugh is like, yeah, we're going to let you go out there week 1, get 15 plus carries, and everybody else has been here for a month and a half practicing. We're going to just toss them to the side. I really don't see a world where that happens. But as you stated, it would be great to have him out there. The offense is better. We're more explosive. I feel like it would be great to have him out there. And like I said earlier, the middle ground of offering maybe a little more incentives to his current deal could smooth things over, and we can move on. But it's just it's hard. It's really hard because there's a lot of moving pieces, and either way, I don't think he's here after this year. I really don't. I think this, outside of running backs being replaceable and the Ravens not paying them, this whole situation is just poured gasoline all over the fire, and it kind of ended it in my opinion. But um, overall, we want to talk about and touch on the edge and corner groups. I feel like those are kind of, well. Okay, we'll throw in left guard as well. So we'll start with edge. Tyus Bowser still on the NFI list, I think it's called, if I'm not mistaken. And so right now we are with Tavius Robinson. Ojabo was missed a practice. Now he's back. We're good. Owe has still been out there. Good. Tavius Robinson, good. Jeremiah Moon, good. What are your thoughts on maybe the depth of the edge group right now? Are you super concerned? Are you like, we need an added piece? What are your thoughts, Kevin?
I would definitely say add a piece. I think they're in better shape than I thought maybe like last week, because I think Ajabo and Owe, based off of all reports, I'm a little more confident in them turning a corner. Now, Ajabo, it's essentially his rookie season. He barely played last year. He had the one tackle, which was actually a strip sack on Joe Burrow. But for Owe, based off of all reports, he's been doing well. And so I think you have your top three guys in Owe, Ajabo, and Bowser, and those are your top three. But I don't think Tavius Robinson is necessarily ready yet. I think he has all the traits, all the tools, but might need a year or two. So what happens if Ajabo goes down? What happens if Bowser has to miss some time? I feel like if they are four deep, I'm a lot more confident. And sure, you can move guys outside. You can be creative. Like, is Trenton Simpson maybe your fourth outside linebacker? Do you utilize him in that way? They have options. But I feel like I'd feel a little more confident if they either brought back Justin Houston. Kyle Van Noy was someone who I feel like could be a really good fit for them, because he has inside outside versatility, not like interior defensive line versatility, but he can play inside. Not that they need him to play inside linebacker, but he can. And plus, he's a super smart football player, and that's someone who, Jadeveon Clowney, maybe they try Yannick Ngakoue round two. I don't know, but just a body in there would be really nice. And I know we talked about Devin Duvernay earlier on, where if a wide receiver needy team needs a wide receiver and the Ravens say, hey, we can move off the salary, we'll trade him to you for a late round conditional pick, because they want to free up money to go get an edge, or we'll talk about corner, go get a corner. Maybe that's what they do, because, again, we haven't heard a lot about them, and they do have avenues and ways to free up some cap space. And I know they do like to keep a couple million for the start of the season, for injuries, for trade deadline, etc. So it wouldn't shock me, especially because we know wide receivers so deep for them. But edge and corner, it's a little bit of a different story, where I always talk about this. We'll get to corner with Marlon, but if an edge guy goes down, you're essentially only too deep at the position, and that's a pretty scary place to be if you're an NFL organization, especially when you need to generate pass rush the way the NFL is built right now.
Definitely. I agree with that. I think that the Ravens do need to add one more piece before the season starts. Van Noy, Houston, either Clowney, Melvin Ingram. There's a few guys still out there, and you kind of want to. I don't want to be in a position again where we're signing JPP for $5 million or $3 million in the middle of the season. I feel like that was a bad spot to be in. And I kind of feel like we're entering deja vu range as time goes on, and we're not really adding anyone. But I think there's between the three that I listed, edge, corner, and guard, I feel like edge is probably the one I'm least concerned about, because you can always scheme pressure, you can always send blitzes, you can always kind of mix things up, but you also don't want to be forced into doing that. So I feel like there's a nice middle ground, and that middle ground would come in adding another piece in there just for some security. But I think out of all the holes we have, I think that's the one I'm the second least concerned about. I would say. But let's switch over here to corner, like you mentioned previously. Um, Rockison went down yesterday, and then he came back. Well, he missed practice today, but the report was that there was no tissue injury in his knee, so reports are good. But the Ravens are very thin there, and with the Trayvon Mullen cut and re-sign, and that you're Pepe's missed some time. You really are playing with fire there. So Kevin, your thoughts on the cornerback position as a whole, and maybe the importance of Marlon Humphrey being healthy for 17 games this year.
Yeah, I would say I'm a little concerned about corner right now. Now, Marlon's Marlon. You don't need to worry about him at all. I kind of liken the corner position right now to what their wide receiver room was last year. And I've been saying that for a long time now. I know others have as well. But the only difference is the receiver room last year didn't have a Marlon Humphrey. Like, you're set with Marlon Humphrey. He's a star stud, top 5 guy. You're set there. But to me, and I put this out on Twitter today, is out to me at least, Marlon Humphrey's the most important player on the Ravens, not named Lamar Jackson, because of the depth of the position, the corner position, and just how good he is in general. Where if Marlon Humphrey goes down, essentially everybody gets bumped up a peg on the ladder, and Rock Ya-Sin becomes your number one. Is it Jalen Armour-Davis? Is it Pepe Williams, Darius Washington, Trayvon Mullen, Kaya Blue Kelly? I mean, we're banking. If you're the Ravens, you're essentially banking on at least one, if not multiple, of those young players to step up, and they could do it. Like, they 100% could. I'm not trying to like rule these guys out before the season even starts, but with this Rock Ya-Sin situation, this could have been a season-ending thing, and the Ravens would have been right back to the drawing board. And I know at this point in the offseason, like, there's not really anybody out there that's going to move a needle for you free agent-wise. Like, they just signed Arthur Millette. I'm a fan of Bryce Callahan. I don't know how much he has left in the tank, but he's someone who is a slot option. They've kind of settled on Millette as their slot guy, it seems like. But do you go out there and make a trade for a corner either before the season, or if it doesn't work out at the trade deadline? It's a risk. I'm not saying it's not going to work out for him, but it is a risk. It's not necessarily the approach I would have taken personally. I would have tried to at least get a more proven number 3 option on the board. And then if another guy establishes themselves in the preseason during training camp, then that's awesome. But we know the way that this position has gone for them over the course of their history. It's an NFL thing where I always say the Ravens start the year with 50 million healthy corners and they end it with 2. It's just we've seen I always go back to 2014 when they had to start Rashawn Melvin off the street against the Patriots in the divisional round. They blew those 2 28-point or 14-point leads. And I thought that they would have won the Super Bowl if they beat the Patriots in that game. And I still go back and think about how they had literally no one at corner. And I don't want to see them go through that again, where I loved when they had the 3 corner rotations of Marlon and Brandon Carr and Jimmy Smith, or, Marcus Peters in there for Brandon Carr, because you always knew that they had Tavon Young too, was, when he was healthy on the field, a good slot corner, but you at least had rotations of guys who you felt comfortable and confident in. And again, I'm not saying that guys can't step up this year, but I would just feel a little better about it heading into the year if there was maybe just one more proven solid option. But again, I just don't know where they get that unless it's in a trade, because we're not in March where everybody's available in free agency. You're kind of looking at the Bryce Callahans and Marcus Peters. I would have been fine with Peters coming back, but it just felt like it wasn't in the cards, more so from a Ravens perspective. So we'll see. It's a risk, but I don't know. It feels like they want to see what they have and then reassess either right before the season or maybe towards the trade deadline.
Yeah. I am pretty mildly concerned about the cornerback room. Once it does feel like, and I know that there is a very large gap between Marlon Humphrey and Rashad Bateman, but it does feel like there are some parallels you can draw between that group last year wide receivers and this year's corner group. In terms of depth, I just feel like of all the positions you want to take a risk at, corner may not be the one that I would like to take the risk at the most. I would much rather risk some other positions that are a little more replaceable, and the Ravens have been historically pretty good at. And the Ravens have historically been good at first-round corners, but through 7th-round corners. I think the Ravens in the past decade are like 2 for 15, 2 for 16, or something like that. So they're not historically good in the later rounds of drafting corners. So it is a concern for me, and I've been voicing it a lot, and I do think that not signing Marcus Peters could bite us, but there is a trade deadline for a reason, and I think out of all the types of corners, I think they need one more outside corner that can kind of play the Jimmy Smith role. I think that's really what they need. Jimmy Smith was an uber talented corner, and he would literally come in behind Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters to go out there and just match up like that. That's such a luxury spot to be in, and maybe we don't. Obviously, we're not going to get someone that's a talent of Jimmy Smith, but to have someone who can serve that role, that can come in and kind of match up on third down, and maybe we can move Marlon inside, and we're not screwed on that side. I think that's really going to be important. But our last kind of concern for me would be, and this is my least concern. I think the 1 through 3 corner, most concerned; edge, least concerned. I mean, second least concerned. And then third least concern would be the left guard spot. Just because, you can't have 5 Pro Bowl, All-Pro offensive linemen across the line. It's not fiscally possible. But you can hide one offensive line on the interior. You can't hide tackles. Hiding tackles, you saw Villanueva, you saw Tyre Phillips, bad idea. But as you've seen with Matt Skura and some of the less talented interior offensive linemen, you can kind of hide them a little bit as long as you have the good players next to him. And thankfully, left guard is surrounded by Tyler Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley. So, Kevin, your thoughts on the left guard spot? Are you concerned? You're like, someone will go out there and be able to play good enough for us?
Yeah, I'd say that it's the least of my concerns too. I mean, I think that I'd be more concerned if the Ben Powers thing didn't happen last year, where there was so much uncertainty too there. And we were saying, well, who's going to be the guy to step up? And then Powers had this great season and cashed out in Denver. It kind of gives me hope that, hey, you know what? Maybe that even though Saleh didn't, come out of college with all, he's pretty raw as a prospect, but he has the strength, has the size, has the athleticism. If you can maximize those traits with putting him next to Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum, as you talked about, you can sign, what is it, if it's Ben Cleveland, if it's John Simpson, they have options they feel confident in. And you're right, you can't have 5 All-Pro linemen. You're going to have a weakness somewhere, maybe not a weakness, but you're going to have not Ronnie Stanley's at all 5 positions, right? You need to be able to say that, yeah, you know what, even though we have really good offensive linemen at 3-4 spots, there's going to be maybe a project or risk at one of the positions. And I think you're right. It's good that it's not a tackle. I know center is a position the Ravens have been looking to stabilize for a while. Tyler Linderbaum is obviously, I think, stabilized that. So I think, look, it's not the worst position they can be in right now. Obviously, you would like to have someone a little more proven there, but I don't think we can necessarily complain because you have Kevin Zeitler on the other side. I think Andrew Voorhees coming in 2024, who I think will either take over for Zeitler or play left guard for them anyway. So if they can find a diamond in the rough early in Saleh, or if they feel like John Simpson can go out there and do his job well, or maybe Ben Cleveland can have the comeback of the century and go out there and play at a high level, I think it's okay. Even if they get like 75% play there or 60% play there, even, I'm okay with that because they are so well positioned at pretty much every other offensive line spot. It's not like they need a left guard in there to be star power because they have nobody else. So I think out of the 3, I'm least concerned about the left guard position. It'd be nice to have good play there, but if they don't get the best play, I think it'll be okay because of what they have at the rest of the offensive line spots.
Yeah, and it's why you pay Ronnie Stanley $20 million a year, and it's why you draft Tyler Linderbaum in the first round. You're hoping those guys can elevate someone who may not be an All-Pro, a Pro Bowler, or someone that's drafted within the first 3 rounds of the draft. It's the nature of the game. And like you said, the least concern out of all the 3 concerns that I can identify now, who knows, between now and week 8, something could happen terribly, and we could be having another concern. But um, last question I want to ask you, Kevin, a little bit more of a light question. Will the Ravens preseason streak stay alive for the 2023 preseason? Give me thumbs up and thumbs down. We're doing it at the same time, and we're gonna put this on Twitter as a poll, and we will see if we can we can see what the Ravens flock opinions on it. Give me thumbs up, thumbs down, Kevin.
Oh, all right. I say thumbs up because I say thumbs up just because I've said it's gonna end for like the past 4 years, and I've been wrong every single time. So I'm like, why not just go with it until they lose a game? They've proven it so much. But the thing is, I don't think they're gonna play anybody. Like, I don't think they're gonna like. Obviously, Lamar's not going to play. Obviously, Odell and all those guys aren't going to play. But I feel like that could also trickle into like maybe the second group only gets a possession or two. My thing, though, is I think they're very deep at a lot of positions. We talked about corner, talked about edge. But I think they're deep enough where they can keep it alive. But I'm not going to lose sleep if they don't do it. It's been a little storyline over the past 6 seasons or however many seasons. I've honestly lost track. That's how long it's been. They lost to Atlanta in like 2017, 2018 or something. But if they lose a game, I'm not gonna. It's preseason. Like, it's fine.
I think it's been 5. I think it's been ever since Lamar came here.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's preseason. Who cares? I think Philly might give them a tough run for the money. And the Commanders as well. See who they start at quarterback. They have 2 good quarterbacks, so we'll see what happens if one of them maybe plays a little bit more. I want the guy who played for this team to be in bubble wrap though, preferably. But Kevin, appreciate you for joining me here tonight. It was great talking to you. You're always very respectful, insightful. Never decline an invite, which is always good. So any last thoughts here, Kevin, before we get out of here?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited for this. This season, there feels like the vibes are different. There's a lot more excitement this season. Hopefully, the Ravens can stay healthy. I think health's a really big part in winning any sports championship. So if they can stay healthy, I think they have a shot. They have a good one. And I'm excited to see how it plays out. It should be a fun year.
Definitely, yeah. It should be a really fun year. And, all Ravens flock, make sure you get your blood pressure medicine because this is probably going to be a high-flying shootout type of season. I just have it in my bones. The offense is going to be scoring a lot, and defense will get stops here and there. But I just feel like we're going to be up a little later than we should be. Some of those night games we got. But appreciate everyone for listening, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.